Picture this. It's Friday, school is out, and your best friend is sleeping over. You two have no plans except to play Kirby Air Ride on the GameCube until the wee hours of the morning. Your mom has ordered Pizza Hut and is even letting you have a can of soda as long as you don't spill it on the carpet. Life is great. Fast forward to current year. Game Freak just released the 7th remake of the Gen 1 Pokemon games, and you see it as the perfect opportunity to relive the glory days of your childhood. You order Pizza Hut, boot up the game, and the delivery driver rings your doorbell right after you finish the tutorial that is somehow still unable to be skipped. You take a slice, bite into it, and then you remember that Pizza Hut is bad, actually. Nobody out-pizzas the Hut? Yeah, sure, buddy. I've got a pizza recipe that I've been tinkering away with for over 5 years now, and while it's by no means traditional or based on one specific style or another, I think it's too good not to share with you. Yes, it requires some prep time and a bit of patience, but trust me when I say it's some of the best pizza you can make out of a home oven, and it'll make you think twice before ordering delivery ever again. So here is what you need to get started. You're going to need some plastic wrap, a mixing bowl, a kitchen scale that measures in grams, a spoon! I use a wooden spoon, but you can use any kind of spoon. You are going to need a pizza peel. This is actually very important. Now this thing right here, this is my pizza stone. If you don't have a pizza stone, then you can use an upside down cookie sheet. As you can see, mine has seen better days, but I'm going to be using that. And lastly, you're going to need an immersion blender for the sauce. Let's talk ingredients. For the dough, we are going to be using the bread flour. The bread flour is nice and glutinous. It's going to give a chewy crust. Now we want the all-purpose flour to sprinkle on top so that we can form the dough. And we want the semolina flour underneath the crust so it slides off. We also want active dry yeast. And we are also going to need some salt for the dough. Now for the sauce. The first and most important thing is San Marzano tomatoes. Very important for your sauce. You are also going to need some garlic, some olive oil, and a little bit of salt. For the cheese, I've got 2 cheeses that we're going to be using for today. We've got fresh mozzarella and Parmigiano Reggiano. For the topping, all I have is the big old pepperoni. Now let's say that you want to add just a little bit more pizzazz to your crust. You're going to need garlic and butter for that. Now let's say that you do not want to make the sauce from scratch. Well, there is another solution. You could just get the jarred marinara sauce. I'm not going to tell anybody, and this works in a pinch, but I'm going to be making it from scratch. For the dough, I'm adapting Jim Leahy's no-knead pizza dough recipe, but with a few tweaks. On one hand, you do have to prepare the dough the day before and have it rise overnight. On the other hand, A, it's super easy to set up and work with, and B, the overnight fermentation gives the crust a slight sourdough-like tang and a chewier texture. The link to the original recipe is in the description. First, you're going to want to put the bowl on the scale and set it to 0. That's going to zero out your weight. Get your bread flour. We want to measure 500 grams of flour. There we go. There's 500 grams right there. Next, you're going to want to measure your salt. I use 2 teaspoons of salt. There's 1 and 2. The next thing is the yeast. Now make sure that you end up only using a 1/4 teaspoon of yeast. It's not a lot of yeast, but it is going to be doing a lot of work overnight. You're going to want to stir in the dry ingredients and make sure that they're all incorporated. Then you set your weight to 0 again, tear out the scale, and then pour in 350 grams of water. It does need to be relatively precise, so take your time and be patient. I'm at 351, just don't tell anybody. Now you can turn the scale off because we're not going to need it anymore. Now you could start mixing, but one thing that I kind of like doing with my pizza dough is I add just a little bit of olive oil. The reason why is my oven doesn't get too terribly hot, And the olive oil is going to help browning on the bottom of the crust. So just a little bit, and then you stir away. Now, as you mix, it's going to come together in one kind of shaggy mess with some leftover flour on the bottom. Just do your best to mix it with the spoon, but at a certain point, you're just going to want to do things by hand. So take all the dough, scrape it off the spoon, and just get messy with it. The main thing is we want to find a way to incorporate all the flour and all the water so it is one giant dough ball with no dry clumps of flour left behind. And just like that, your dough has basically come together. And with your dough in the bowl, now we are going to just take some plastic wrap, stick it over the top of the bowl. Now, one of the most important steps, do not forget this step, whatever you do. You have to draw a smiley face on top of the plastic wrap. That way he can be happy. Now give your guy a little name. I'm naming mine Funky Little Guy. And then take your bowl, and you're going to want to stick it in a warm, dark place. I'm just going to leave mine in the oven, but with the light on. I'll see you later, little guy. And you're going to leave the dough in there for 24 hours. Now for the sauce. If you want to make the sauce beforehand and store it in the fridge overnight like me, you can. Or you can honestly wait until the next day while the oven is preheating. It takes no time at all, as you can see. What I like using is these to-go containers that you sometimes get from restaurants. They're really useful for mixing the sauce. First, you're going to want to open your San Marzano tomatoes, and then you dunk them into the container just like that. Now for the garlic. What I like doing is I like using the back of the knife to press down on the garlic, and that cracks the garlic clove open just a little bit, allowing you to peel off the papery layer on the outside, because we don't want any of that in the sauce. As you can see, I'm using 4 garlic cloves today. Sometimes I'll use 3 if they're really big, or 5 if they're really small. Really, there's no set recipe for this thing. You just kind of do what feels right. And there's 4. Excellent. Now for the olive oil, I think that I add about teaspoon? That kind of feels like a teaspoon. And then for the salt, I just kind of add that much? Maybe a little more? There we go. Now all you need to do is take your immersion blender and blend. You start with a little bit of pulsing just to make sure that you don't splash everywhere. But the main thing that we want to do is emulsify the olive oil in the sauce, make sure that we chop up the garlic cloves, and make sure that our sauce has a consistency. It shouldn't take more than 20 seconds max. And there you have it, the sauce is done.
24 hours later.
We're checking on our dough. Oh, he sure is funky. You'll also notice that there's some bubbles that have formed, which means that the yeast is working and the dough's ready to go. But if we're going to be forming the dough, we need some counter space. Perfect. With the dough now out of the oven, we can start preheating our oven to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 260 degrees Celsius for those who don't live in the States. Realistically, you're going to want to get your oven as hot as it will go. Mine is only 500. With the dough now ready, let's prepare the peel. We're going to want to take some semolina flour and sprinkle it over the peel. Notice how I'm sprinkling from relatively high up. I know that you can't exactly tell from this angle, but this is a better way to get better distribution for the semolina flour. And we want a good layer of semolina flour because that's going to prevent the dough from sticking to the peel. Now with your cleared work surface, you are going to take some flour and gently dust your entire work surface. This is going to prevent the dough from sticking. Then you take your dough and you just kind of plop it on the flour there. Now, I forgot to mention this earlier, but if you have a bench scraper, this is super useful for dividing the dough. Go ahead and divide it into half, and then into quarters. Now, if you don't have a bench scraper, you can also use a knife. Just be very careful. Don't destroy your countertops. We're only going to be using one of these, so you can wrap or package the remaining dough balls in the fridge for up to 3 days. Oh no, you get to have 3 more pizzas throughout the week. Whatever will you do? I'm only taking 1 of the quarters of dough that I had before. I'm going to fold it in on itself and press down. Flip, press down. You'll notice that there's a pattern when I end up working with the dough. I flip it, I press it down into something that's a bit round, and then I flip it over again, and I keep pressing. Now, you can keep pressing and keep pushing it outwards, but don't tell the Italians. I'm using a rolling pin. Now, when I use a rolling pin, I am rolling from the center outwards. And I'm also changing directions every now and then. If all that you're doing is rolling from one direction, then you're going to get a rectangular pizza. But by rolling from the center out, you're able to get something that is a little bit more round and a little bit more consistent. Yeah, that's not too bad of a shape. So now what we're going to do is we are going to lift it on our knuckle, carry it over, and transfer it over to the peel. Be careful not to press too hard, and give it a little shake. That way we know that it is sliding and it is ready to go. Now before we add the sauce, because this is a special pizza, I am going to add a little bit of olive oil to the base. And then I'm just going to gently spread that around so it covers the entire thing. Now for the sauce, I'm going to add 1 scoop, 2 scoops, and 3 scoops. Then we're going to spread that out and see what our sauce coverage is going to look like when we spread it almost all the way to the edges. Now, I like to spread my sauce almost all the way to the edges because that's going to give us nice little brown burnt bits on the crust, and I just think that's delicious. Yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and add 1 more scoop. The general rule of thumb for me is that you want to add just a little bit more sauce than you think you might need. And now for the mozzarella, I've got fresh mozzarella that already comes kind of sliced, so I'm just going to layer them on like that. Just like so. Well, there we go. Now we're going to add some pepperoni, and I'm just going to space these out as well. It's okay if you need to make a few corrections here and there. It's all part of the process. Now we're going to take our pizza, slide it, yes, looks like it's good to go, and then very carefully, we'll head over to the oven, and we're going to slide it right onto the pizza stone, and we're going to bake that baby for 8 minutes. Now, if you want to take your crust to the next level, we're going to be making some garlic butter to brush on the crust. Using the same method to remove the outer layer as before, just like so, and then slicing off about 2 tablespoons worth of butter, and then plopping that in the same saucepan. We're going to go right over to the stove, and we're just going to put that over low heat until it gets melty and the garlic starts infusing with the butter. And after 8 minutes, your pizza is ready. You can head on over to the oven, and there goes my fire alarm. Well, my fire alarm doesn't like the fact that I'm making pizza, but I do. Now, while the pizza is hot, go ahead and grate some Parmigiano Reggiano all over the top. Go a little extra. You're worth it. Now go ahead and take that garlic butter and brush it all over the crust, all along the outside edge. See, now this here is special. This here is beautiful. Alright, now all there's left to do is slice. I usually just slice it into quarters. Bon appetit. Oh. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. That is a good slice of pizza. Does it out Pizza the Hut? Yes. Every single time. And now you have what it takes to make it in your own home kitchen. If you want to try out this recipe, make sure to hit the like button and share this video with someone who's looking to spice up their skills in the kitchen. Is this the type of content I normally do? Nah, I mostly stream Nintendo games on Twitch. Is this the only WabbleFoods video I'll ever make? Well, never say never. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay funky, my friends.